Join the Missing Witches Reparations fundraiser by making a donation to the 60s Scoop Network at 60scoopnetwork.org.
You aren't being a proper woman, therefore you must be a witch. You must be a witch.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Missing Witches podcast. I am Amy, and I want to start with a reminder that this episode is a part of our 5th annual Missing Witches Reparations fundraiser. We recognize that witches and New Age practitioners have too often benefited from an extractive relationship with Indigenous people, their culture, their knowledge, and of course the land. So every year, we at Missing Witches and our coven and extended witch community spend the month of May raising money for Indigenous-led support organizations, especially the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal. Risa and I pay forward our profits for the month of May to the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal. And we gather together with magical friends to spotlight Indigenous voices through conversations like this one. Of course, we are also inviting you to join in on this reparations movement. So here's a quick rundown of how our fundraiser works. Make a donation of $10 or more to your local Native Women's Shelter or Indigenous support organization, or donate to the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal. Take a screenshot of your receipt and email it to missingwitches@gmail.com with the subject line, reparation. Be entered to win one of more than 20 fabulous prizes. You can check out the full list on our website, donated by luminaries of our witch community, people like Jinx Monsoon, Amanda Yates Garcia, and for every $10, you'll get one entry. So $50 is 5 entries, $100 is 10 entries, and so on. And as soon as you make your donation and send us your receipt, you'll automatically receive coupon codes for discounts from 2 of our favorite witchy businesses. So there is only winning. There is no losing when we join a reparations movement. And today, I'm so thrilled to be joined by the co-founder of the 60s Scoop Network and a carrier of ceremonial teachings, Elaine Kicknosway. Hi, Elaine. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Bonjour. It's so nice to meet you and see you.
Yes, it's so wonderful to be in this space with you. This is your first time on the Missing Witches podcast. So maybe you could start by introducing yourself to our listeners. Who are you today? We believe you're under no obligation to be who you were 5 minutes ago. So I've read your bio, but who are you today?
So bonjour, ani tanse kwekwe wachesego. Elaine Dishnakas. My name is Elaine. Maingan Dodom. I am Wolf Clan. Pelicaners and Donjaba. I come from a very small Cree, Swampy Creek community in Treaty 6, and I'm a member of the Peter Ballantine Cree Nation. And I am a mother. I am a stepmother, step-grandmother, step-great-grandmother. I am a helper. I am a partner to my loving partner for the past 26 years. And I took his name. So that's where the Kicknosway comes in. I am a trauma-informed, land-based focusing therapist. I'm also a full-spectrum doula. And now I'm on my way to get my menopause certification for doula menopause, because I think that's an area that bodies, the older bodies, need to have more conversation, because there's a lot of conversation about the beginning of life, but when we get into our olding or older parts of our life where our eggs aren't as plentiful and our estrogen lowers, I find that conversation that a lot of people kind of get silent, and the importance of like where our bodies are sovereign. So it's really understanding our inherent right to our body. I'm also a co-founder with my amazing colleague Colleen Cardinal, and I'm so grateful for her and her guidance and wisdom and her leadership. She encourages me so much, and sometimes it feels like we have a plan, but we don't have a plan.
I can
And
relate.
it's yeah, and we have an idea, and we haven't sometimes a little expectation, but then it just kind of explodes into something that you never knew that would happen. And I'm very grateful for that journey along the way for the past 13, 14 years that we've been created with the 60 Scoop, but also within our friendship. And I view her as a really confidant and one that's been there to carry the what they say the carry the road with, the good path with. And what else am I? I work at Minwashin Lodge as the traditional healer. I just recently went back to work after surviving breast cancer last year, and now in remission. I'm a sister of my biological side. I have 15 siblings. There's 9 of us. Then on my dad's side he's from Buffalo Narrows, and my mom's side is from Amisk Lake. So I'm very grateful. I just spent some time with my older sisters. So it was really nice to be in their presence, and just kind of, because I'm the baby girl. So I kind of got that, that gentle taken care of as they're also my original mothers. I was really grateful to be in their presence again. And then I'm one that has returned from the 60s Scoop, because I was apprehended when I was 1969. I was apprehended, and I returned home in 1996. So 27 years later, I walked home. But also, I like to bike. I like to walk. I like to feed birds. I love fishing. Like, I don't even need to eat the fish. I just love the silence, and just kind of just be with the birds. I feed the birds. Like, I have bird feeders outside every day. I love the sound of the nature. And any time that I can, as best as I can, help. Well, I have a truck, so I help where I can. But I also understand that there's limit, as we get older, and asking for help is really important. So a small bit about me. I'm a language learner still. I'm originally a Cree speaker when I was little, according to my siblings. So there's always that language revival in me. I'm a singer. I'm a hand drum singer. I was so a hand drummer, hand singer. So there's a lot of. I'm not a sewer though. I don't sew. I don't tend to cook a lot. I like barbecuing. I don't view that as cooking. I like barbecuing. There's a
You can't do it
variety there.
all.
No, and I don't want
Yes,
to.
no.
But that's a small bit of what I do.
It's so much of what you just said, like, revolves around the theme of mutual care. Whether it's Colleen, shout out Colleen for being a good partner, your friends, your family, also your bird feeders. I know I have several bird feeders, and it definitely is like a mutually beneficial relationship. I feed them, and then they feed my soul with their presence. And I think we can do that with humans too, right?
Yeah, it has to be reciprocal.
Has to be reciprocal, and I think we've lost that in the 21st century. There's so much hoarding and fear that we've forgotten that generosity comes back to us. It's almost like that idea has been brainwashed out of us.
Yeah, I'm relearning how to run. And my husband just bought an electric bike. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, let's try this biking again. You know,
Yeah.
it's okay to try new things again. You used to love. You can love it again, just in a different way.
Yeah. I spoke to Patty Krawick recently, the author of Bad Indians Book Club, and she had an X-Files poster behind her with a UFO, and it said, "I want to believe." And I was talking to her and I was looking at the poster, and I just kept thinking about what a fruitful question this could be. So I want to ask you, Elaine, what do you want to believe? We can cast reality aside for the moment. What do you want to believe?
I want to believe that we all come home.
Mm.
There's been generations on this land, across these territories, across these treaties, across the nation of purposeful, funded, federally funded partnerships that took Indigenous children away, that took Inuit children and Métis children away, whether it was through schooling, whether it was through the federal hospitaling, whether it was through the federal relocation. I want to believe that we'll all get to come home. And that includes our missing and murdered, because that this still concept of separation, this still concept of it doesn't matter, or this concept of why are we still talking about this? Because it matters. And I want to believe that somebody is caring, because we care. We care for our loved ones. We search for our missing. We search for, and it shouldn't be shocking when this country discovers bodies at residential schools or the tuberculosis centers where they were relocated and centered, where we were sent when we were kids, even to the foster care system. They don't talk about our loss, the childhood loss or deaths in child welfare, and where they bury us sometimes under different names. Because I want to believe that we all get to come home. That's such an important place of where our umbilical cord comes from. We get to come home to the rightful place of our land, to our kin, to our language and our songs, to our sky and our spirit. I want to believe that we all get to come home. And that's a daily prayer that I put out there. I want all of us to come home. And with advocacy, maybe that sometimes, wishful thinking, that place of understanding that some of us as survivors did go home, and we have a relationship with our biological family, but not all of us did, and even the veterans, some didn't even get to come home. They're buried over in foreign lands, but they're visited now. They're visited by our relatives, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. And you are living proof that this is not ancient history by any means. This is living history. I think the last residential school in Canada was closed in the 1990s, which was really not that long ago.
Yeah, the Inuit one closed in 1997. The Indian one closed in 1996. So the Inuit one closed in 1997. We have to remember those different conversations. Not all the group homes, not all the halls.
Yeah.
Like you have, like my younger brothers went to Prince Albert Residential School. So it's like if you were born at a certain time before 1997, if you were Inuk or Indian, because that's what the government called us back then, 1996, all the way, right? So think of, well, it's 2025, so think of a 35-year-old, right? That young, 40-year-olds, they're that young, right? And they're living amongst us, as they say. They're living amongst us and still carrying the heart, break in the home. Because it was still a distension of your land, your community, language, family, and having to live amongst hierarchy that sometimes completely silenced voices.
And certainly just because... Oh, go ahead.
And some, because sometimes history will say, oh, but there was that one student that spoke about such a good experience, and people will float on that. But I always remind people, it wasn't just a kid. Like, how did your family benefit? How did your family? Because if it wasn't just the kids, who was the teacher? Who was the RCMP? Who was the priest? Who was the nun in your family? Why aren't you showing us your picture? And why aren't you reciprocating them? Because you show our pictures every September 30th or whenever you talk about PRC or reconciliation. Well, you could reverse that and look back into your own family and say, yes, my family helped build the school. Yes, my family benefited. My family was teaching there. My family, they're reciprocal. And sometimes in that truth, the truth comes to that place of healing. Because that family that worked there is silencing and feeling shame. What would happen if you outed yourself? Like, what are we going to do? Okay, we believe you. The reality is a majority of them may have passed away. But then we can say, and they came forward and they recognized maybe their harm that family's legacy had. And this is how they're reciprocating it. This is how they're undoing that with the community, within the nation, within livelihood and monetary. How are you giving back community because you benefited? And everybody just said, oh, it was just a job. No, it wasn't a job. It was part of a genocide.
Yes. And even though those residential schools are closed and Canada is, talking a big game about reconciliation, the impact of that is continual. The impact of... I wish there was another term, because 60s scoop almost sounds like cute. You know what I mean? Oh, it was the 60s scoop. It was like a dance we used to do or something like that. Like, this was the kidnapping of children away from their homes. How did you eventually return home? How did that happen?
You have to consider, we didn't, because I was raised in foster care first. And then I was raised through this agency called an Adopt an Indian and Métis Child, called the AIM program in Saskatchewan. And their start was in 1967. So their height of scooping children was in 1969. Ta-da! That's when I was scooped. And it was literally black cars running after us as kids, using a vehicle to run after. And we were literally scooped. And then placed in these farms or halls or these concepts that we were orphaned, giving the outside narration that there was something wrong with these kids. We need to save these kids, to save the Indian. Same concept of what was the narration at residential school. Save the Indian. Or save the man, kill the Indian. Comes from the Carlisle school that was adapted up here. You know, and so the same narration, save the person, kill the Indian, kill their language, just take them all away, And we have to consider back then, nobody was talking about police record checks. So some of us were adopted into farming homes and put into pretty dangerous situations, expecting us to be these humans adulting at childhood ages. And then exploited, human trafficked, abused, put on display. Look, this is my Indian child. And you just kind of stand there and you're like, where? Because you didn't know you were the Indian. But you know that there's a difference depending on the age you were apprehended. Like I was a toddler. So I already knew the feel of my mother, the feel of my siblings, the smell of my territory, the teas and the carnation milk that I drank, the moose meat, and the community remembrance. Your body remembers those different feels of safety, but you also remember the trauma too, and the terrorizing that happened at these different little ages, and you don't even know, and nobody's explaining anything. No one's talking about mental health for little people back then. It was just like, we're saving them. And the commercializing that was placed on us too. We were in catalogs, we were in commercials, we were in newspapers, we were in our Daily Child, whether it was on TV or in newspapers. And the different agencies that came from not just Adopt an Indian and Métis, the AIM program, the different other agencies that were systematically just pinballing all of our kids everywhere. And not always ensuring or following up with these families or making friendships with these families so that it was given the interpretation that your child welfare worker was friends with the family. You had to play nice with your child welfare worker. And that just made no sense. That's like being a child of war. Because you're in a system of war that you don't even know. And that isolation too. You're at our house now. You live here. You eat this food. You speak this language.
You worship this God.
You worship this God. Because you had to be saved. And, people, even myself, I've had to adapt how I've spoken because there used to be a time of loyalty. And I can't speak like that. That was my experience, but that wasn't my experience. And this place of recognizing. Actually, I was running away from the time I got into that house. I started running away from that home when I was 4 years old, and then 6, and then 8, and running just somewhere else, because this wasn't making any sense to me. And then being raised in another country for a few years, and then being brought over to Ontario, and just the way I escaped over here was I became a really good drug addict in my younger years. I was a very good alcoholic because I thought, hey, I can't escape that way anymore, so I'll just take myself out. It was easier that way. And there was other people that wanted to do that too. So then you build a community. And you're like, I belong somewhere.
Yeah. And then, with the escapees.
Yeah. right? And we think that this is something normal, right? But that's pretty dangerous too, because you get yourself into some really not so great situations, and you're thinking, oh, this must be part of this living, of trying to escape. And yeah, and then you realize you don't really want to do that anymore. And by the time I was in my late 20s, I was trying to harm reduce from when I was about 24 to about 28. Harm reduction, and thank God we didn't talk about harm reduction back then. And harm reduction saved my life, because people were like, what would happen if you just kind of scaled back? And I was like, what? What do you mean? I was like, I'd gone to college, became an early childhood educator, and I was like, is this my life? Like, am I supposed to do this for the rest of my life? Or what else can I do? This isn't always working anymore. I'm losing jobs too, and I'm an adult because I've been, you know, adulting out here because I left that house finally when I was 17, and I was put on this different pathway of, like, what would happen if you went to college, and what would happen if you went to school every day, and what would happen? And I kind of still carry that forward. What would happen if I got another certificate? What would happen if I did go to school? What else can I do? And that's that growing into, places of, like, you're right, that's what happened. But how are you living with what also you can grow into? So the 60 scoop isn't just my path. It's like 40,000 to 60,000.
I think those are
And
conservative estimates too, right?
yeah, because they didn't number us, right? We were trapped. We were super trapped, like I always, and people are like, oh, I don't know my paperwork. Well, you can ask for it. Go to your child welfare, give your date, give your names. You know, it's hard to do because it's like, this is me. And that's why under the 60 Scoop Network, we have a DNA detectives. So if you check on our website, your DNA detectives, there's also a mapping exercise you can do there that you can put your name, like, where were you born? What was your original name? Like, it's your lifeline that you want to fill, Mine, I put mine pretty minimum, simple. It goes from, Saskatchewan or Prince Albert, Flin Flon, Prince Albert, Saskatoon, Botswana, Saskatoon, Ontario, and I've stayed in Ontario, so, so it's kind of like my own tracking. Like, yep, that's where I was, and that was the age, and I reunited in 1996, and I'm still in that conversation of how am I still consistently engaging with my own family, and I'm still learning, even after 30 years, and even opening the child welfare files together as siblings. Like, what would happen? Holy heck, there's a lot to learn.
Listeners, I want to remind you that you can join our reparations fundraiser and possibly win a prize by donating to the 60s Scoop Network. So, Elaine, I want to know, like, how did you conjure the fortitude to not only, get sober, get clean, go to school, get all of your certificates, but then to found this 60 Scoop Network? How did you conjure that strength to take your pain and turn it into something that was going to benefit other people?
There were other survivors here. Like, a lot were brought to Ottawa. Like, a lot of survivors, 60 Scoop specific, Ottawa. So there used to be a beautiful young lady. She passed away, Leslie Parlemba. And when I say ba, it means that they were living here once, but their memory stays. And then there's another nice lady. Her name's Beverly Pfeiffer, and Colleen and myself, and we met for lunch. And I was kind of ticked off because Eric Robinson had a round table. Oh, year was that? I think it was like 2012. And had a round table of 60 scoop survivors, and kind of doing a report on the 60 scoop survivors. And I was kind of little tipped off. It was 2016, and he no, it was 2014, and he did he was doing a report to acknowledge the suffering of the stations in Newton, and he brought together some survivors, and I was like, well, who did he bring together? Like, how come he doesn't know us? Was born in Manitoba. Colleen's from Alberta. Leslie Ba was from Saskatchewan, and Beverly's from Ontario, right? And there we go. And I was like, one of those, like, how come we didn't even know? So that's that conversation of Canada's really good at taking out, but it's not good at bringing back.
Mm.
So what would happen if there was a better communication that was federally funded? Because you federally funded all these systems to extract. But what would happen if you brought down and communicate? And I know it has to start somewhere. People are like, it has to start. I know, but it's isolation again, that feeling of isolation and that feeling of helplessness that brings behind it the valid rate. That kind of popped in my head. Like, how dare he? Blah blah blah. And that's not, it has nothing to do with him. It's the fact that there was a conversation and we felt left out. I felt left out. So Leslie and a few of them said, well, why don't we do our own gathering? And I was like, okay, like, how do we do that? I'd never done anything like that. And Colleen is such a wonderful organizer with Beverly and Leslie, and there was a few others on the committee, and we made a ad hoc committee. We had no money, and so we did karaoke, karaoke and fundraisers. And a lot of the time, the non-Indigenous were the ones that stepped forward with the prizes, with the rides, with the what else do you need, and different unions and grassroots unions came forward, and it was a really eye-opening for me. And some of them were from the way that they had already supported MMIW and T basis, and they were like, okay, we can do this part too. And that was new for me, and that was like my hesitancy, because I was like, oh no, I don't, like, my social skills of, like, now I gotta talk to new people, and because I'm an introvert, like, by usual, right? And Colleen is great at like, kind of like my husband, like, they're really great at going out there and like, having no problem, like, a crisis is happening, no problem, we got this, and so I've had to really work on my anxiety and my social skills.
I hear ya.
But it all worked out. It all worked out, and we brought in a sacred fire. We started in ceremony, and we brought different things. There was different learning curves that but all these survivors showed up, and we didn't even know that they'd come on their own dime. We were like, if you can make it here, these are the dates, these are the times, and this is what we can offer. And they all just came. And as they were all leaving after the 4-day event, they were like, okay, see you next year. And we're like, next year? And that was the starting of the gatherings these national, international gatherings, because it went to survivors that were raised in France, New Zealand, Australia, like it went everywhere.
You said
Scotland.
you were taken to Botswana at one point, you said?
Because I was raised by a white family that also worked for an agency that worked overseas.
Mhm.
So, you know, when I was trying to explain that to my biological mom, my my adopted parents had made a photo album. I bought the photo album, and she looked at me sitting on an ostrich, and she's like, "What are you doing? And what is that?" And I said, "Oh, that's when we lived in Botswana." And she's like, "Where's that?" And I said, "Africa." And she's like, "I didn't tell them that you would do that." So it was like really painful for her, really
I'm sure.
painful to her that she didn't know that her little girl had gone so far. And that different place of heart, you feel that generational love for your children. And if you're a parent, or even if you love children, even if you're connected to a child and you don't know where that they are, there's such heart that just can come up at any time. And then you find out a little bit of the truth, and you're like, I didn't know that. So it's a lot of it. So imagine how many hearts across this nation, across this land, that still exist today.
You said in this first gathering there was an element of ceremony. Can you talk about the healing nature of ceremony, how ceremony can help people to heal themselves and the people with whom they're gathering?
Well, you know, sometimes that's that first time of seeing First Nations or an Indigenous, you know, or Métis ceremony, because there's distinctiveness. But one thing that does bring us together, even in different other nations, excuse me, is fire.
Fire.
Fire is life. There's an element of fire. There's a there's a living element in a fire, and when you hear the crackling, it's a medicine talking. So sometimes when we're sitting by the fire, and sometimes survivors just sat by the fire the whole time, they didn't want to be inside, and that was fine. There was no expectation of you to. That's really important. So it was trying to be as what we knew back then of what was trauma informed. We were trying to be as flexible as a space to give space for us. Because that wasn't that didn't happen very often. Give space for survivors, specifically a 60 scoop survivor. Because sometimes sometimes we were raised with our siblings. Sometimes we were raised in isolation. Sometimes we were adopted and returned, and then adopted again, and then returned. Sometimes we were raised only in group homes. Sometimes we were raised in this space of orphanage. So there's a lot of isolation. And trying to explain that to outside world, and then bringing survivors all together by saying, we might understand a little, we might not, but we all have a shared experience called child welfare, the beginning of this different place called the school. And we brought in as best as we could of who we knew back then, some different facilitators, and we used the leadership in this territory, Claudette Kamanda, and we went to her, we offered her tobacco, and we asked for a name. And not many of us are speaker, because we've lost our talk, as they say. And she's a beautiful speaker, and they named us Bi-Giwen. You're coming home. And it was so, you know, and of course, we were, trying to move forward real quick, real fast thinking. And we were calling it Bi-Giwen for a while. And so we're just like navigating, it's Bi-Giwen, from home. And it was just really incredible because we didn't know. And some people came from Vancouver, some people came from close. Like I just thought it was going to be like just Ottawa peoples, Ottawa survivors, but I didn't realize how far of a catch in this social media learning back then to now, it just kind of spread. And I was like, I guess, and they had organized, an intake and who was coming, who wasn't. And we were just like, if you can make it here, we'll try and set you up. And that's where the non-Indigenous step forward. And we'll billet people. We'll drive them. We'll help with food. And, I remember going to the grocery store and helping, the cook that had been hired and needing to start. So I had to leave them at the grocery store and they were all mad when but the reality is, I wanted to be there on time, and it's hard to coordinate everything to be there at the same time too. And sometimes, like if you look at the first picture of the survivors, like we've lost some of them now. They're not here now. So I was like, we did that. We did that. And there was people that wanted to come so that place of, like wanting to be there for them and with them and understanding whatever the circumstances, sometimes they weren't all there. That's we didn't find everybody yet. There's lots of time.
You've got lots and lots of time. I imagine you're going to be doing this for many, many years to come.
I sometimes wonder because are we still relevant? Sense of relevancy, I because you got to say, like sometimes the funding, like we run on hardly any funding, right? Like we got a nice grant at one point and we got a curriculum. So I always say hire us as your curriculum. If you look at that and there's jig, I probably said that wrong. It's a trauma informed training. So there's 5 or 6 different trainings that we deliver, how to be an ally, philosophy of trauma, 60 scoop impact, when you're working, what is in your bundle when you're working with 60 scoop survivors, talking circles, 60 scoop 101, like there's a whole bunch. And that's why I always say hire us, hire survivors for survivors, or survivors for non-survivors that don't know. Because that place where people are trying to say, oh, we're culturally competent, but are you on 60 scoop? Like how trauma informed are you? So I always say, go to our webpage, look at it, hire us. Because it's really important that you hear from survivors, survivor-led, as they say.
Yeah. And again, listeners, if you make a donation to the 60 Scoop Network, obviously that will count toward the prize draw. But it's not just about donation. It's about investing in a potential future that we can share together. I would prefer if you think of it as an investment as opposed to a donation. Elaine, if you're comfortable closing your eyes, please do so. But I want to invite you to sort of describe that possible future using your vision, your imagination, the ancestors that live within you. Can you describe what a re-indigenized world would look like?
And you know how people talk about land back? It's more than just land back, it's language back, community back, prayers to come back. all the love would come back. Because see, when we talk about trauma, we talk about love. Right? There would be no harm. There would be no more harm. I've worked in abuse for my whole life. None of that would be back. It would have never happened. It would never happen generationally, medically, dentistry, school-wide, home-wide, trauma-informed wellness. We would all have that knowledge that if one got hurt, we would understand we're all, and the water would be clean. And there would be no extraction and no idea that this conversation of or separatism would be even on the table. There'd be no design. Like if we say, we all belong in the circle, then include our two-spirit and trans relatives. Even questioning. We have every right to be in such good ways that bring our ceremony and our inherent rights back, inherent right of passaging back. I try to live in a way that doesn't do harm, and it's hard because there's a lot of different things, and that's why I don't like being on social media. And then that feeling of, as my son puts it, FOMO, fear of missing out. But I'm like, you know what? If I'm supposed to see it, I see it. If I don't really want to, because there's a lot of harmful words that are happening that are harmful for my relatives. So I watch cat videos. I listen to our songs. I wish I could have recorded the voices of my loved ones to listen to. So that's my next step, is to ask my siblings, record your voice for me, singing a song or even just saying a prayer for me. Because we all need prayers, we all need help. But the bigger picture is that we would all be feeling a sense of home. Come home to yourself.
Thank you so much for that vision. I don't want to put you on the spot, but would you consider singing a couple of lines for us that can be recorded here today?
What's the jig? Time a jig, gonna make the one. Get that one, gonna do. I know what I'm gonna do. Oh, no, not that one. I forgot it. Late friend taught me that one. It was the most Indian word song that I ever sang. Me got my baby show me suck. Me got my prayer knock on his neck. Me got my prayer them way money. Hey, hey, ho. Oh, hey, 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 ho. Oh, hey, 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 ho. Oh, hey, hey, hey. Oh, hey, 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 ho. That was taught to me by Elaine.
Thank you so much, Elaine. I really appreciate that, you singing for us and taking the time to sit down with me. Again, can you remind our listeners how they can support the 60s Scoop Network and your work generally?
Well, look us up. We're at 60scoopnetwork.org. same word, 60sScoopNetwork.org. You can listen to our upcoming podcasts. We're getting into podcasting. We have a donate in kind services we provide, legal options for 60 Scoop survivors, the different media, news, the DNA, genetic, the ebendagic trauma-informed training, the mapping, the resources, and the community event. So that's that important place of ensuring that you follow through, and then follow through again, and then check it again, and then make it a part of your daily habit of how am I helping in this community on this land that I live on, maybe benefiting.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Listeners, again, that's the 60s Scoop Network. Of course, all of these links, and also to find Elaine on social media. Even though she's busy watching cat videos, we can still follow her to keep up with what Elaine is doing. Again, thank you so much for sitting down with me. Listeners, make your donation. Send us a screenshot of your receipt. You'll be entered to win fabulous prizes. You'll automatically get discount codes to a couple of our favorite witchy businesses. And you'll have the knowledge that you are investing in this indigenized future that we are envisioning here today. Thank you again so much, Elaine Kicknosway. It's been a joy to be in circle with you. I can't wait to have another conversation in the future.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Kinas commented. Hi.
And blessed fucking be.
You must be a witch.
Join the Missing Witches Reparations fundraiser by making a donation to the 60s Scoop Network at 60sScoopNetwork.org.